we will come back and complete our creator chat, okay? We still have a bunch to go there. We're just gonna get him in here. So I need everybody that's in the boxes to drop into the comments. Please don't leave. And like he said, keep tapping and doing all of those things, and we're gonna get folks in here to participate in this conversation. All right, everybody drop
down,
off.
Tiffany.
What was that, Ian?
How do I drop down? I've never been in a multi before.
I can drop you down, I think. Hold on.
Same question. I have no idea how to drop down.
Tony, help me. Okay. You're just removing them from the box, not the thing, right? Okay, perfect. All right, I'm gonna bring Mr. Kennedy up. All right, welcome, welcome. I'm not sure if I have Scott or Mr. Kennedy right now, but if I'm gonna try my best to get your camera to turn on. I'm gonna try to send a request for it. If you tap your screen that Mr. Kennedy's little picture is in, you can tap the camera and then click accept, and it should allow you to turn your camera on for everybody. For those of you down in the audience, tonight we, as a large group of creators here on TikTok, have the humbling experience of having Mr. Kennedy come on tonight to talk to us about the First Amendment. I think it might be his first TikTok live ever. We are incredibly humbled to have him here. And I hope you guys enjoy the next little bit while we ask some important questions and spend some time with a presidential candidate that actually was willing to come down and speak to the people without the filter of the mainstream media, just to come talk to regular, everyday people with questions that real people need answered. I don't know if you want me to call you Bobby or Mr. Kennedy tonight. What would you prefer?
You can call me Bobby.
Okay. All right. For anyone that's new here, I got to meet Bobby back in November. He had me in to record an episode of his podcast. It was supposed to be a kitchen table talk, and then we kept talking, and it got longer and longer. And so I got to meet him in person. That aired on February 7th. And I don't know if you've seen what we've covered tonight so far, Bobby, but we are talking about the First Amendment. We are talking about the TikTok ban and censorship, and just really kind of what's happening in America and some of our fears and some of the risks that have to do with that. I don't know if you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about what your perspectives are on the First Amendment, maybe to just give us some groundwork, and then we'll start bringing creators up one at a time to ask you their questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, and I apologize. My plane came in late to Tampa, and so I'm driving right now across north central Florida, and I'm in a car, so I apologize to everybody. I was hoping to be in a hotel by now, but you know, this is what they're trying to do in Congress is it's perverse, it's twisted, it clearly violates the First Amendment. It also violates the Fifth Amendment, which protects property rights. You can't just go take away somebody's property in this country without due process and just compensation. And it's about, you know, we've seen this this impulse by government, particularly over the last 3 years since the COVID epidemic, openly censors speech of Americans. And, you know, a lot of this stuff, I'm on TikTok. I have an account on TikTok. It's important for me to be able to communicate to people from TikTok. There's a lot of content in TikTok that I disagree with, but that's what democracy is about. Hamilton, Madison, and Adams said that they put the guarantee of free expression in the First Amendment because all of the other rights depend on it. If you have a government that can censor its critics or control what the public hears or learns, control the sources of their information, that government has license for any atrocity. And we saw in 2020, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when the government started censoring speech for the first time, pressuring. We now know from the Twitter files, from my lawsuit against the Biden administration, which is now up to the Supreme Court, Kennedy versus Biden and Murphy versus Biden, which is a lawsuit by the Missouri Attorney General and the Louisiana Attorney Generals that my organization and me personally have worked very hard on that lawsuit. We know now that the White House, 37 hours after President Biden took office, the White House was pressuring Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, and Twitter to censor speech and threatening those platforms that if they did not cooperate, if they did not begin censoring President Biden's critics, that the Biden administration was going to bring antitrust suits against them and was going to end their Section 230 immunity. And in conformance and reaction to those threats, which they knew were wrong, Facebook and Twitter opened up portals for the FBI that were then used by the CIA, by CISA, by NIH, by the IRS, and by other administrative agencies and regulatory agencies and enforcement agencies to censor this. Anybody who tells you that TikTok is the villain because the Chinese government is going to come in and spy on us, well, guess what? All of those, the information, your personal information, your personal business is being scraped on all of those websites. Twitter's doing it, less so now with Elon there. Facebook, Meta is doing it outrageously in an area much, much worse, in a way that's much worse than anything that's happening on TikTok, much, much grander scale. YouTube is doing it, Google's doing it, and they have intelligence agencies, including the CIA, the Five Eyes agencies, and now have access to that data. And they're scraping the data, and they're using it to control our realities, our perceptions of realities, to control the content that we see on social media that Americans have access to. I would say this: there is no exception for national security in the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution was written for hard times. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. During the Civil War, there were agent provocateurs being sent from the Confederate states up into the northern states to incite draft riots. And it was absolutely demoralizing the North, because in New York and other cities, there were these riots against the war going on, and they were being incited by Confederates who were coming up for that purpose. Well, Abraham Lincoln knew who those men were, and he ordered them arrested, and he ordered the habeas corpus suspended for national security reasons. That we really had national security reasons at that point. 659,000 Americans died. It's the equivalent of 7.2 million today. The future existence of our nation was at stake, and we were being torn asunder. And yet, the Supreme Court, Justice Taney, wrote an opinion saying you can't do it. It doesn't matter if the life of the nation is at stake. It doesn't matter that hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. He said freedom of speech is more important right than anything else, and you can't trample it. You can't temper it. The Constitution was written by hard times, not for easy times. The Constitution was written not to protect the speech that everybody agrees with. It was written to protect the speech that is inconvenient, that nobody agrees with, that nobody wants to hear. Speech from people who are your enemies, speech from in 1978, there were many liberals who went and supported the right of the Ku Klux Klan to walk through Skokie, Illinois, which the American Civil Liberties Union defended them. Everybody was appalled by what the Ku Klux Klan was saying. But people thought, if we're Americans, we need to be able to die for their right to say it, even if it's repulsive to us. And that's what freedom of speech is. We all know, I grew up reading Robert Heinlein and Aldous Huxley and Alexander Solzhenitsyn and all of these extraordinary novelists and writers who were writing about a dystopian future. And in every case, the dystopian future begins with restrictions on speech. It's the beginning it's the first step on the slippery slope toward totalitarianism. And there has never been a time in history when we look back and we say that the guys who were censoring speech were the good guys. They're always the bad guys, and they're the bad guys today. Listen, they banned RT TV, which is Russian language. They're trying to ban Al Jazeera. I am offended by that. I want to hear what the Russians think about us. I want to hear what what Al Jazeera thinks about Israel. I have my own feelings about Israel, and Al Jazeera is going to disagree with me, but I want to hear what they're saying. It's important. Democracy is about trusting the demos, the people. If we have a free flow of information, that the policies and the ideas that are annealed in the furnace of debate will rise up and will triumph in that marketplace of ideas, and that is the advantage that democracy has on any other system of government. I'll say one other, because this isn't just about free speech. That is using this threat of national security that the Chinese are, secretly infiltrating the minds of our children. So, well, we have the CIA doing the same thing on all of these American, on Meta and YouTube. We're being manipulated. We got rid of the Smith-Mundt Act, which prohibited the CIA from propagandizing the American people. And in 2014, President Obama got rid of those prohibitions. So every day we have our intelligence agencies manipulating us. And, the answer to that is not to get rid of all the communications, it's to get them out of that business. But by the way, I spent a lot of years litigating against factory farms in this country. The biggest factory farms are Smithfield farms, which are polluting the environment. Smithfield controls 30% of pork production in this country. They're destroying farm communities, and guess who owns them? China.
Yeah, China.
So if we're concerned about China infiltrating our country, we ought to start with our food supply, because they can starve us, and they're buying American farmland. They're buying American food production companies, and guess what else? I spent a lot of the last couple of years I wrote a book about the Wuhan lab. Guess who was financing the Wuhan lab? We were. Guess who was financing coronavirus bioweapons development in the Wuhan lab? We were. We were giving that technology, that cutting edge technology to the Chinese. Oh, if we're really worried about the Chinese, we should stop funding their bioweapons development. We should stop them from controlling U.S. universities, which they're doing through millions of dollars through their program of infiltrating and stealing our information. We should stop them from controlling our utilities, our communication systems. There's so many. We should stop deindustrializing our country and sending all of our factories over to China. If we're really worried about it, that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be going after TikTok. We have destroyed this generation of kids, and they can't buy houses. The kids who are using TikTok, we're destroying their capacity to start businesses. The one place that a lot of them are finding a gateway for their entrepreneurial energies is TikTok.
That's right.
They're going on TikTok, they're starting businesses. We should be proud of that. We should encourage them. And there's not a big impediment, to them getting on it. They're not charging people the way that Meta is going to start charging verified accounts, and for boosting. You can go on there. If you have an imagination, if you're resourceful, if you're entrepreneurial, you can figure out a way to make money. And there are hundreds of thousands of people in this generation who are doing that. And now we're going to take that away from them. It is crazy. What they're doing is sickening, and they're all bought and paid for, and they're doing things that are absolutely antithetical to every American value that I'm familiar with.
We see it every day. We see young people on here begging for help, reaching out, just trying to find ways to pay their basic bills, and people on TikTok forming communities around them and lifting them up. Is it okay with you if I bring up Ian Carroll? He's actually interviewing Nicole Shanahan next week, I think on Twitter. And he has a question for you. Can I bring him up to ask a question?
Sure, you can bring up anybody you want.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to bring up Ian right now, and we're going to get a question. Oh, wait. There it is. Perfect. All right, Ian, I'm going to have you step into the box. We're going to see how long it takes, and we'll be able to do one or two. Tony, can you make me smaller and make Mr. Kennedy bigger? I don't know how to do that. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Ian.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for coming in to talk to us on TikTok. It's really cool to see a presidential candidate engaging with people where they are. I want to just point out that you're the only presidential candidate that I've ever seen in my lifetime actually speak about the threat that agencies like the CIA pose to the First Amendment and American democracy if they're left unchecked. Have you given any thought to how you might implement safeguards if you're elected that will help protect freedom of speech and the other amendments to the Constitution from our own national security complex that might endure beyond your presidency?
Well, in order for it to guarantee that it will endure beyond my presidency, I would have to do it through legislation, which I'm not confident I can get through the houses. But I can tell you this, my first day in office, I'm going to issue an executive order that forbids any federal employee in any agency from participating in either propagandizing the American people or in censoring them. In any act of censorship, you will lose your job if you do that under the Kennedy administration. I'm also going to have a federal order, executive order, that says that any federal official who lies to Americans or lies publicly in conjunction with their official duties will also lose their job. We're going to stop the lying, we're going to stop the propaganda, and we're going to stop the censorship. And, if I can do that for 8 years, and I will root out the people in those agencies who are running the censorship cartel, and we already know who a lot of them are. And I'm going to disband the divisions and branches of those agencies that are propagandizing American people. And, the CIA and its charter says they can't do that. The Smith-Mundt Act said they can't do it. And in recent years, they were doing it anyway. They had a secret program, the CIA, for many years called Operation Mockingbird. And it was exposed in 1973 by the House Select Assassinations Committee when they started investigating the CIA. And that year, Carl Bernstein, who's one of the two Washington Post reporters who uncovered Watergate, published a major investigative article in Rolling Stone magazine showing that 400 of the top journalists in our country and editors in our country at the Washington Post, the New York Times, at CBS, ABC, NBC were CIA assets, were paid CIA assets whose job was to lie to the American public, to distort history, to distort politics, to serve the agency agenda. And the agency, when that was exposed before Congress, agreed to dismantle this illegal program. Nobody was punished for it. They agreed to dismantle it. They continue, the CIA, to be the biggest funder of journalism around the world. So they funnel $10 billion a year, through USAID to control journalists, to pay off journalists, blackmail, bribe people. They own many of the important newspapers and television stations in the developing world and across Europe. And they acknowledge that they do that, but they are not allowed to propagandize the American people prior to 2014. And during the Obama administration, those rules, the Obama White House issued a series of executive orders that gave the CIA a justification for ignoring those rules, and now they're, full blast. There's a couple of historians, David Talbot, who's a CIA historian, another CIA historian called Dick Russell, who have done articles recently that show how the CIA has taken control of major journals, particularly on the American left, the Daily Beast, controlled by them, Salon, Slate, Rolling Stone is now, which was a counterculture magazine when I was growing up. It was the enemy of the CIA. It was exposing them like in 1973. Today it's controlled. The editor is a guy called Noah Schlackman, who comes out of the national security state. And if you read all of their articles, it's all about promoting, the CIA agenda, the Ukraine war, vaccination for everybody, etc. And David Talbot has done another series showing how many of the major journals in this country, particularly on the liberal left, are now controlled by the CIA. So they're in full force, and we need to end it. And I, as president, I'm going to end it. My father had a plan for reforming the CIA. My uncle, President Kennedy, did too. And actually, in the last tranche of documents that, all of the documents relevant to my uncle's murder were required to be released under the Kennedy Assassination Documents Act. By 2017, President Biden promised to release them. President Trump promised to release them. Both of these presidents got into office and caved into the CIA, which does not want them released. And one of the documents in the most recent tranche that got released was a plan that my uncle, President Kennedy, had for reforming the CIA that were written by two of his aides, Dick Goodwin and Arthur Schlesinger. My father, a week before he was murdered, he was asked by a journalist, Pete Hamill, what he was going to do about the CIA. And he told Hamill, and it was basically the same plan my uncle had, which is to separate the clandestine division, what they call the plans division, which is the dirty tricks division that does, fixing elections, assassinating foreign leaders, murdering, blackmailing, bribing, labor unions, etc. And he was going to separate that division from the espionage division. The espionage is we need the CIA. That means information gathering and analysis, and the CIA ought to be doing that, but it should not be doing these dirty tricks. And if it is, it should be completely separate from that other division so that there can be accountability. So if somebody's looking over their shoulder and saying, wait a minute, you killed one terrorist in Afghanistan with a drone, but you also killed 6 of his brothers who weren't terrorists, and now he's got another 6 brothers who are all terrorists, and you've turned the whole village against us. Is that a good outcome? There's no questions like that are ever asked by the CIA. They overthrow a leader and they write it off as a triumph, like they did with the first democratically elected president of Iran in 1953. They overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh to keep oil prices, in the control of Texaco and BP. But what happened? And that was a big triumph for the CIA, but we're still dealing with the blowback from that.
Yes.
And so, that never happens. And
you can look and see also what women looked like in Iran in the 60s and 70s and what they look like today after so much intervention, right?
Yeah.
How their rights have been scaled back and how they don't have the ability to live a life of education and participation in the democratic state. And you can see what happens when we impose ourselves in those situations and the natural outcomes of that.
Yeah.
We do have
I knew that you would have an amazing answer to that. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'm so glad you are not afraid to speak about those harder parts of our government and how they affect American citizens. So thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you. And thanks for standing up for free speech. I mean, all of you guys on TikTok are warriors now, and you're fighting for something that's absolutely critical, which is America's right to get their information from any source that they want, not to have some congressman with a low IQ telling them where and from whom they can get their information. It's outrageous that those guys think they have it, and what they're doing is illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's antithetical to American values, and I want to thank all of you for standing up against this outrage.
Bobby, can I bring up James next? He's an independent journalist that has a question for you on Citizens United. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring James up next, and then Tony. James, can you go on ahead and send me up a request? I can't see you. Tony, help me.
Amazing investigative journalism. He's worked with Crystal and Sagra on Breaking Points. He's a very great evidence-based journalist.
All right, I'm going to bring him up now, if I can. Where's he at?
I'm here.
All right, there you are. Okay, perfect. James, go on ahead.
Hey, thank you so much, Bobby, for joining us. Can I call you that? Is that I just launched into that?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, yeah, as a citizen journalist, which, by the way, I covered one of your rallies a few months ago in Vegas, and it's amongst some of the most diverse crowds I've ever seen. Anybody who's a former Trump supporter, Bernie, somewhere in between. So it was really amazing to see. But yes, the question I wanted to ask you today, naturally, as a citizen journalist, I believe the First Amendment is paramount in the fight against tyranny. But according to the Supreme Court, their decision on Citizens United in 2010, money is also considered a form of speech, which means that those groups, whether they be corporations or individuals with unlimited money, can actually silence speech or at the very least control the speech of others. Now, do you think that ruling was in alignment with the Constitution? And if not, what would you do as president to reverse Citizens United?
No, and let me give you a little bit of a history. America functionally lost its democracy in the 1880s. at a time that was called the Gilded Age. And it was, because these robber barons gained control of the United States government, and these big, effectively billionaires, but, at this time, the first billionaire was John D. Rockefeller around 1901. And he was one of the leaders, but Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Morgans, the Fricks, the Whitneys, and they all sat on these overlapping boards that controlled all of the industry in this country: the oil industry, the cotton industry, the sugar industry, the rail industry. They were called the trusts. And they controlled everything. At that time, there was no direct election of senators. The senators were chosen by the state legislatures. You could easily purchase the state legislature for a few dollars. And it was said that the only legislature that was not for sale was the Pennsylvania legislature, because they were fully owned by John D. Rockefeller, and he wasn't selling any of them. But the legislatures picked the senators, and the senators who ran the political parties would then pick the president. So it gave these robber barons control over the White House and the Senate and all of the instrumentalities of our government. And then something happened. There was a popular movement. There was a populist movement in the countryside and agricultural areas that was democratic. There was a progressive movement in the cities that was Republican, and they got together, and there was a group of muckraking journalists: Ida Tarbell, Sinclair Lewis, Upton Sinclair, and many others, who started writing about the Rockefellers and the corruption. And the American people got outraged, and they elected a president, Teddy Roosevelt, who was part of the oligarchy, but he was not scared of it, and he was rebellious, and he was willing to take them down. And they passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, and they dismantled they broke up Standard Oil, the biggest company in the world. They passed a 40-hour work week. They got rid of child labor. They gave women the vote for the first time. They made direct election of senators. They passed all these reforms, but the most important one was a law they passed in 1908 that made it illegal for corporations to donate to federal political candidates. That law, we got our democracy back, and that law stayed in place for 100 years. And then in 2008, a business-oriented Supreme Court, as you said, in the Citizens United case, issued this crazy holding that said that a political donation is speech. Oh, it enjoys First Amendment protection. So you can't regulate campaign finance. There's no other country in the world that considers money to be speech. And of course it isn't. It's legalized bribery. But all of these enormous problems, the corporate takeover of our government really just accelerated at that point. And now our government is this corrupt merger of state and corporate power. The corporations own all the agencies. They become sock puppets for the industry. They are no longer representing the welfare of the American public, but rather the mercantile interests of the corporations they're supposed to regulate. Well, what do we do about it? It's very, very hard now to regulate campaign finance. And the only way, in my view, that we get rid of Citizens United is with a constitutional amendment. And that means we have to get 26 states to adopt a law that says we need to get rid of Citizens United case, and that that the federal government has the capacity, that Congress can regulate campaign finance laws. And one of the things I'm going to do as soon as I get into the White House is I'm going to strongly push a constitutional amendment in all of these states to get rid of the Citizens United law. It's the only way we can do it, but it's absolutely a necessity if we're going to reclaim American democracy from from this new oligarchy of billionaires and the corporate kleptocracy that now governs our that is now subverting America's exemplary democracy.
Absolutely. Totally. I mean, that's to me, that's the number one thing. That's the root of all issues, no matter what issue you're looking at. It stems down to, okay, what is the money telling us? So I appreciate you for coming on and answering that question.
I 100% agree.
Bobby, we're going to go to Jason Linton. He has a very large following here on TikTok, and he is the head of a foster family that has a lot of us that are very invested in all of the things that go on in his household and the community he's building. He has a really amazing question on sort of what his children are facing as they go to university and their ability to exercise their First Amendment rights. I'm going to let him go on ahead.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to address you directly. This is the first in history that a presidential candidate has done this, and we really appreciate you for having the courage to come on here and face us and our questions. And this is one of my questions: is one of the issues that have been taking center stage in the media these past several weeks is an increase in crackdowns on students protesting the genocide in Gaza. Do you believe that their right to protest on college campuses should be protected?
I absolutely do. I would differ with you and with them about whether there's a genocide going on in Gaza. I think there is a genocide going on in the other Mideastern countries. It's a genocide against Christians and Jews. I do not believe that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide, but I believe that students ought to be able to protest it. They ought to be able to speak about it. They ought to be able to voice their protests, and as long as they do it peacefully and without interfering with the rights of other students to get an education or damaging property. If it's peaceful protest, it's absolutely protected by the First Amendment, and it's something that we all ought to encourage, whether we agree with it or not.
Thank you so much. I'm bringing up Linzy right now. She has a question about small businesses and some of what they're facing. Linzy, I'm going to bring you into the box.
Hello.
Hello.
Linzy Taylor. Go ahead, Linzy.
Hello, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Kennedy. Hi, I'm just a mom on TikTok. My question is, if TikTok gets banned, 7 million small businesses would be shut down, and millions of creators and their families would lose their livelihood due to such an extreme and chaotic and almost unanimous bipartisan vote. What would that do to the economy? And if these business owners and creators suddenly lost their revenue because of the ban, would they have a right to sue somehow due to the loss of income? And if not, could anyone file on our behalf like an attorney general?
I don't know if you have the numbers, Bobby, but right now we know that TikTok is paying out about $23 billion a year to small businesses and supporting over 300,000 jobs in the United States each year through small businesses.
Yeah, well, those are jobs we can't afford to lose. And I'm going to litigate on this issue against TikTok and on the illegal constraints on the First Amendment. These are Fifth Amendment issues. They're taking people's business without due process, without just compensation. It's the same thing they did, using the so-called COVID emergency. They shut down 3.3 million businesses in this country with no due process, no just compensation. They shifted $4 trillion in wealth from the American middle class to this, new oligarchy of billionaires. They created, President Biden and President Trump created a billionaire a day for 500 days during the global lockdowns. And the most important impact was on American democracy, because American democracy is rooted in Main Street businesses. These are people, the ownership society. This is the American middle class. These are the businesses that, I grew up with in my town, the local hardware store, the local restaurants. You go in there, the local bookstore where you go in there and there's a plaque on the wall from the Boy Scouts. These are the businesses that hired my kids during the summer. They paid for my children's hockey jerseys. They paid for their Little League uniforms, and we shut them all down. And, and guess what? We were all given a lesson on how to learn how to use Amazon for 3 years. And it's very seductive, because you find a picture of something you want and you press send and it's in your driveway the next day. But Amazon's not paying local taxes in our community, and they're not hiring our kids. And in fact, Amazon doesn't pay any taxes at all. Amazon last year paid 0 federal taxes, 0. And that, is the beneficiary when they're shutting down TikTok. Well, guess who wants to shut down TikTok? Meta wants to shut down TikTok. The people who profited off the COVID pandemic, who got rich, super rich, Google, all of these big platforms who now are seeing TikTok as a threat, and they want to get rid of it. And so, it's a threat to me. There should be diversity. There should be a diversity of information. diversity of information sources, and TikTok has proven itself this extraordinary business opportunity, particularly people who are millennials or Gen Xers who have very, very few paths to prosperity in their lives. And so many of them are finding it on TikTok, and it's just a crime against that generation has been victimized and destroyed by the baby boom generation. By all of these congressmen and senators who pretend they're trying to safeguard something about our country, and they're actually destroying it. They're all the ones that supported COVID lockdowns, and now they're supporting this, and it is a crime. And anyway, I'm going to sue them, and I hope you guys will too.
That is a perfect lead in to Tara Lynn's question. We're going to Tara Lynn Romero. Tara Lynn built her TikTok community, but when the government tried to come and take her property from her, they tried to adversely take her property that she had purchased, and she built a community that fights for property rights all across the United States, and they've helped defend owners' rights in multiple jurisdictions. And she has a couple questions for you. Go ahead, Tara. Carolyn.
Hi, thanks so much, Tiffany and Bobby. I echo everyone's appreciation for you having the courage to come live and sit with us and answer our questions. So I want to start with that. My question to you is this. A lot of people want to know what they can do to help fight the forced divestiture of TikTok. We know that you filed a lawsuit. Several creators have also filed a lawsuit. But what can, the 4.9 thousand people watching live here today do to fight this forced divestiture?
Well, there may be opportunities for class action suits, particularly for people who own businesses, and that I think there's other attorneys who are using other legal theories. And, it's not just the business. TikTok itself is only 20% owned by, the two Chinese inventors, but, 60% owned by foreign investors, including 7,000 Americans. And, they're taking the property away from those investors as well. I think there's a broad range of people who have claims, and I have not researched the legal claims for people who are running businesses, but this just seems to me like such an obvious affront to the Fifth Amendment guarantee of due process and just compensation when the government takes away your business. This is what the Fifth Amendment was written for, to prevent this kind of government overreach. And it's Congress today is a joke. It's a joke. It's the idea that they would do this is and pretend that they're doing it because they don't like China when they're letting China do all of this other mischief in our country is crazy.
And she had a follow-up that is short, but I'm going to let her do it. Go ahead with number 6.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tiffany. Here's the follow-up question. As many of us know, Biden has a TikTok account. What's your opinion on that, and do you find it hypocritical?
I would say if you look up hypocrisy in the dictionary, they should have a little picture next to it of Biden's TikTok account. As he said, he's going to maintain that TikTok account until after November. Oh, if it's so dangerous, if there's such a national security, emergency that they're going to close down all of these businesses for TikTokers and injure the economy so dramatically for national security reasons, well, why is he keeping his TikTok account? Why doesn't he stand up? During the American Revolution, there were a lot of Americans who put their property on the line. They put their lives on the line. Many of them died to give us the Constitution. They put their reputations on the line, their salaries, everything. And, President Biden is trying to do something here, have his cake and eat it too. He's it's like wearing the American flag on your lapel. That's an easy kind of patriotism. I'm going to shut down my neighbor's business with my election, business plan. I'm just going to shut down your business out of my patriotism. That's what he's doing. It's comical and offensive.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Guys, I think I can take one more question, but I'm almost up to an hour now.
You have given us far more than we expected, and we appreciate it. I'm going to ask, what would you say to all of the young people of America that have found TikTok as their home, the place where they're finding ways to make ends meet, the place where they're finding ways to circumvent their impossible housing solutions, the place where they've come to find ways to coordinate with people on things they're passionate about, whether it's protesting at the Capitol with us on TikTok or in universities over a war overseas. Like, what would you say to them about the prospect that so many of them have lost their hope, and the government, it seems like it just keeps taking things, and now it feels like they're taking their voice. They're on the verge of giving up, so many of them. What would you say?
I would say stop complaining and organize. Start fighting back. And like I said, this is the new American Revolution. Free speech is the front line, and this is just one of the many, many attacks on it. And we all need to get together and fight for this. And, my campaign is going to do it. If I get in there, this is not going to happen. And, I'll fight for your right to speak, for your right to organize, for your right to run a business, for the right to get information from any source that you want. That's what America's about. We're supposed to believe in democracy, and we need to do everything we can. And I know a lot of you have organized. We need to do everything we can to stop them from doing this. And I will be there to help you all along the way.
We're so grateful for you coming on. We are grateful for the bravery of facing us without any prep. And thank you, even though your flight was late. Thank you for taking the time in the car to meet with us. We have had tens of thousands of people come through this live in the last couple hours. And while Mr. Kennedy is going to step off, the rest of us are going to stay on, and we're going to continue this conversation. We still had a ways to go. So we're so grateful you were here. I appreciate you taking the time, the energy, the effort, and for honestly just putting the questions of these everyday Americans ahead of what some journalist that is paid to ask you a specific question would ask you. I'm just really grateful for that.
Anytime. Thank you. And thanks for bringing the fight to Congress.
Thanks, Bobby. You have an amazing night, and we hope to have you back soon. Truly.
Thank you. See you guys.
Have a good night.
Wow.
Thanks, Bobby. That was so cool. It was so cool that he was in the car. He's like, my flight was late. I'm driving. I'm just a dude with a phone, but I'm in a car and I can talk on the phone to the people. That was pretty cool, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think.
Go ahead, Stephen, please.
I said I agree. I think it's firsthand representation of the access to information that TikTok allows us to consume. Just the availability and the access to information, regardless of who anybody chooses that they're going to be voting for. In my opinion, this is just an example of our leaders that are standing behind and supporting our right, our First Amendment right to freedom of speech, as well as the Fifth Amendment right that this TikTok ban poses to every single American user. 170 million American users of the application. So
yeah, could I just say I was trying to keep up with the chat while he was talking, and this is exactly why they're not going to allow him to be on the debate stage, because I could see people in there saying, man, I didn't like this guy, or like, now I'm confused on voting day, because I think people have their preconceptions of maybe his ideas or what he stands for. He's some kind of kook. But then when you give him like 20, 30 minutes to speak, then you start to get a better understanding of what he actually believes in, his vision for the country. And this is the poll, the requirements, I guarantee you, as soon as he hits 15%, I don't know if people know the requirements to be on the debate stage, it's 15% in 4 polls. And right now, I think he has 3 polls that he's above 15%, but I guarantee if he gets that 4th one, it'll be like, oh, well, we got 20% or some other bull crap they're going to make up. So, I just wish there was more opportunity for regular people who aren't as engaged in politics like myself and some of the other people in here that are just day in, day out on this, just to just get a sense of, who's actually running and give them a platform so then people can actually make up their mind.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Like I said, I've had the benefit of meeting him in person. I do want to start to redirect some of our conversation back in just a minute because this is not a campaign event for Bobby Kennedy. We wanted to talk to him about the ban. We wanted to talk to him about First Amendment issues. I'm grateful he was here. I hope everybody follows every creator in these boxes. This is the first town hall we're doing. This is not the last town hall we're doing. We wanted to show a proof of concept We wanted to show that we can demand more of our politicians. We can bring them to meet us where we are. We can demand that they come on here and that they answer our questions without filtration. He didn't get to see our questions. He didn't get to screen our questions. They didn't ask that I put up a single question. They trusted that he would have the answers that people needed. And if you didn't agree with him on one of his answers, then that's going to happen, right? But we are allowed to demand more than we are demanding now. We don't need a moderator that is paid by one of 5 billionaires that controls every article, television show, and thing that comes across our screen to tell us what questions are important to us. We're allowed to come up here and ask those questions. Tens of thousands of people passed through this live over the last hour. Tens of thousands of people on a screen. We didn't need to fill a stadium. We were here. He came and he met us where we are, and we're allowed to demand that of other politicians. So this is the first TikTok town hall, but I am already planning our next TikTok town hall. And I hope everybody follows everyone here, because we are democratizing democracy. We are bringing democracy to the people. We are not going to keep letting them tell us how to vote, what to care about, or who to hate. Because I'm sick of them telling me I'm supposed to hate all of you guys when we have way more in common than we have apart. Way more. They need us divided. They need us to hate each other. Because as long as we hate each other and we fight with each other, we won't work together and organize to fight them and to demand more of them. That's my bully pulpit for a moment. Ian, I'm going to ask you and Tony to take over for a minute. I have to go to the bathroom. I drank too much water because I was nervous. I'll be right back. I'm human. Sorry, guys. I really got
Yep. Nice work. Yeah, I was just going to quickly point out.
Jay, I'm trying to bring him up.
Cool. I was just going to quickly point out that one of the answers that he gave is one that I think we don't talk about enough. It was early on when he talked about how politicians have made it normal for them to lie to us now. And it's a certain barrier to free speech. When we accept politicians lying, that puts a barrier to free speech that we don't talk about nearly enough. Because if they're allowed to just lie to us and mislead us, then how can we even, especially when they're lying to us and misleading us through the filters of a mass media monopoly that is already filtering the questions and already filtering the access, so no one can press them on their lies if they don't choose to be pressed. And so there's this huge apparatus that allows them to just tell us lies and get away with it. And when he comes on here, and I think it might have been Linzy, you asked him a question about, who was that asking the question about the protest? Oh, it might have been Dad Life Jason. And he gave his answer about Zionism, that he didn't think that there was genocide and all that. He disagreed. But that way it was we have direct access to either asking more questions or to just to not have that filtration, which is regardless of whether you agree with an answer or not, it at least gets us back to honesty and accountability for those answers.
That's the funny part to me too, is we're so willing to discard an independent candidate. The quickness with which people will disregard it. I mean, without looking at the situation we're in, if you look at private equity, you look at the military-industrial complex, you look at big ag, you look at the insider trading, you look at all these things that they've all participated in, and yet he just gave us a synopsis off the top of his head, by the way, about all these other things that we are all sitting here nodding and being yep, this, I agree with this, and then one thing, and it can turn off an entire voter base. And I'm just really confused sometimes at this polarity that we see. I'm not going to sit here and pine for any candidate, really, but I think we all need to be really careful of how quick we are to judge an independent candidate at a time when we need an independent candidate more than ever. And I would just be really careful of that. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do or who to vote for. Just make sure you're holding everybody to that standard. Because
I want to ask all of you guys. Do you want to go first, though?
Tony, I agree with you.
Quick question.
Sorry.
No, you go.
No, go ahead, Stephen.
I just wanted to say I agree with you, Tony. It's not a matter of who we choose to vote for. This was not a campaign rally for RFK. This was somebody who has a voice, who is in a position of leadership, that is here saying, look, our First Amendment rights are on the line, and I support your fight to overturn this TikTok ban. And that's what this conversation is about. So ultimately, the more voices that we have in a position of leadership that are willing to stand behind us, everybody here, the people in this live stream, the people that are commenting, every viewer that has come through, those are the voices that we need. Whether we're voting for those voices or not, we still need them to be heard.
One of the questions there at the end about things that people can do regarding trying to stop the TikTok ban, I'm going to keep stressing that might feel fruitless for a while, but I promise you there are states in the United States where your attorney general might be willing to defend your right to engage in interstate commerce or defend your right to free speech. There probably aren't a lot of states, but there are states, I promise you, especially with attorney generals that aren't running for re-election. If free speech is their line, they might be willing to. So I encourage all of you to contact your governor's offices and your attorney general's offices, especially in the states that have a more bipartisan makeup, like swing states. Ian, are you talking to your dog?
He muted.
I don't know what that
I
was.
actually have to pick up my son, so I'm going to drop out. You can bring somebody else up. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Lindsay, I was so glad you were here. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for trusting me to think. When I called all these guys that are way fancier than me on TikTok and they said yes, I'm so grateful that everybody trusted me to do this first TikTok town hall, to come here and ask hard questions. And they put so much effort and work and thought into it. So I'm just going to say one more time, please, please, please follow all of the creators in here. Please. You don't have to follow me if you don't want to, but you should follow everybody else. I hope you follow me, but follow everybody else. Please.
I'm gonna have to drop out as well, but thank you so much for having me. Thanks for creating this forum so we can all share our collective voices. It's such an important thing, and it shows so many people that are watching how easy it is to participate, but mostly how important it is to participate in the conversation, to let your voice be heard, because that's what gets things moving. Like what RFK said at the end, he said, stop complaining and start organizing.
Yes.
And that's what needs to be done. And it doesn't happen unless we have a conversation. So thank you for this conversation. I appreciate you so much.
I'm so glad you were here, Jason. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
love to family, truly.
Take
Thank
it
you.
easy, guys. Bye, Steven.
Just saying, Tiffany, I was kind of curious to ask the people that are here still is, do you guys think that, so if we show that this format works and we start getting politicians to come directly to us and they start to get engagement directly from social media apps, do you think it's actually realistic, like that in the next 4 or 8 years, we could start to make it so effective that politicians are forced to come to us? Because if they don't, all their opponents are going to be getting more engagement than them. The way that technology tends to sort of force people to use it because it's so useful.
I'm going to say the dirty thing first. The
100%.
entire purpose of this is that I fundamentally believe we will absolutely do that much sooner than 4 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say right now that a big goal of a number of people in these boxes, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but some people that I've asked directly have said, is that we want to lift up the independent or the small candidates that aren't taking money from PACs, that aren't taking money from billionaires, that just want to serve their communities and don't have a fighting chance. This platform can give it to them without needing to rent a stadium for 10,000. We can bring them the 10,000. We don't need a stadium. And financially, for those smaller candidates, the people that aren't taking that money, why wouldn't we? We will give them their stage if they won't let them on the stage. And that's exactly why they want to shut TikTok down, by the way. They see what we can do here. But why would we not? Why would every independent candidate, and I'm not saying an independent party, I mean any non-backed candidate that is not funded by a billionaire or some mega PAC that is telling them what to do and how to do everything they do, that doesn't have an independent thought or an independent desire to truly serve instead of just getting there to insider trade. Why would they not seek out this type of a platform when you don't have to spend the money to find your audience and your support?
Is because it's going to help them win. But if that no longer helps them win, they don't need that APAC money. They just go through us because we can deliver them the victory.
And I'm going to say fundamentally, I stress this over and over and over again, but there are good people that want to run for office and are stopped from succeeding in that endeavor every single day by the simple fact that they can't raise enough money to show the world the good they can do. And instead, what happens is absolute power is corrupting absolutely. And we find these dinosaurs that got into Congress before anyone in this window was born. They have been there since before we were born, okay? And they get into Congress and they cling to power like a goddamn barnacle suffocating a sea turtle, right? And they stay there forever just trying to scrape power. They have enough money. They've got the money. And you see creatures like Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein that are quite literally, Dianne Feinstein was on her deathbed, literally in a wheelchair, and her aide wheeled her in and lifted her hand like a sock puppet and said the word I, and you heard it on the tape. They're like, you've got to say I. And she goes, where am I? You've got to say I. They made her vote. She should have been at home with her grandchildren, her cushy-ass Senate pension fund, and she should have enjoyed her retirement. But she was so desperate to cling to that power because you get the wrong kind of people serving. when the only indication or the only like motivation they have is more and more power. We need to find people that want to serve for the right way. And those are the exact same people. They're the exact same people that will be the ones that will help us to set new law that will create the term limits and get rid of the insider trading. We can do this. We can do this. And I realize everybody thinks I'm just some altruistic like whack job when I say that. But I believe fundamentally it's possible because they can't control how we communicate anymore. They can't.
And it could be inspiring enough,
Yes.
not only at the state and federal level, but in your local elections as well. Get the right people to run for commissioner, mayor,
Yes.
city manager, your council. All of it matters. And the longer we wait and the longer we shun independent candidates and just go with party leanings and things like that, the more we're just going to see the same old, over and over again.
Santa Corky's in the audience. Santa, I'm so happy you're here. If you want to come up, you just send the request. I love Santa Corky so much. I love him.
I need to jump. I have
It's okay.
a 10:30
We're actually at the end.
a.m.
We've come to
meeting.
10:07. We are at the wind down point, guys. I hope we get on some more lives. Maybe we'll start something weekly or bi-weekly where a bunch of us jump on to continue our conversations. I'm hoping to have an announcement on our next TikTok town hall in the next couple weeks. Again, my last plea is that you follow all of the creators that were here tonight, that you throw confetti at them and all the hearts and all of the things and the dancing teddy bears and whatever it is you want to give them, because they did an enormous amount of work to prep for today. Steven has to get ready to go. He's in China, okay? He got up early in China to come on here today for us, right? Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm very grateful.
Ironic that we're sitting here talking about our First Amendment right to
It's
freedom
amazing. It
of
wasn't
speech and
shut down,
expression.
It's
But
so
yet,
weird that
I
we
am
weren't shut
here
down
in
or
China,
censored.
exercising my right to freedom
right.
of speech in a foreign country. They say doesn't allow that. So here I am. Yeah.
Well,
So,
and so-
thank you.
Does anyone have any final thoughts you'd like to
I
say
was,
before we
ask
close
the-
it
I was
down?
gonna- I was just going to ask if he's using a VPN, because I had some issues in China when I was there.
Off and on. I haven't had to 100%, so no.
I've got one thing I want to say, just because I was watching people in the chat when Kennedy was up, and so many people were like, is this real? And then a couple other people were like, is this historic? Yes. For those of you here, the 2,000 of you still here, congratulations. You were part of a historic event, which was this town hall on TikTok with a presidential candidate. And Tiff, you've been giving us a lot of kudos, and it's all deserved. I am so honored to be a part of this group. But girl, round of applause for you, because you had the audacity to do
Claps in
this
the comments.
and to execute it perfectly. I mean, 10 out of 10. We'll follow you anywhere. Whatever you want to do, we'll do this all over again.
Well, the next round we'll have to do, we'll more candidates, more private equity, more monopolies, more to talk about. We're going to be here.
A couple things before we wrap. I want to say
Go, Tony.
to all the creators in here, if you want to leave a comment really quick, there's a lot of people who want to follow you, and for whatever reason, they're not able to tap on the windows to do so. So if all of y'all want to leave a little something down there and do that. And the other thing, there's so many people that seem hopeless in the comments tonight. The apathy is real. And I'm going to tell you right now, apathy was the wagon that brought us here. And the less we participate, the more it's just going to keep going where it goes. And if we want change, we kind of have to just pick up a shovel and start working on it in your own little corner, in your own little niche, in the way that you know how. Doesn't mean everybody's got to run for a seat. There's a lot of ways to build up community, state, and communities and states happen to make up the United States that we call a federal government. So don't forget that part. Hope is everything. If we can make it through ice ages, we can make it through this.
Callie, do you have any last words for us today?
No, but a bug just flew on my computer screen, so no.
Thank you so much for being here, Kelly. Thank you for coming to DC and introducing me to a new friend and like someone that's so supportive. I'm so glad you're here. I would not, you ride or die with this girl.
Yes,
the girl,
thank you
she
so much.
fights and fights and fights and fights like hell for her little corner of TikTok and the amazing business she's built. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Truly.
Sorry, that bug definitely scared me. But thank y'all for joining the fight. Thank you for everybody who joined. Thank you for everyone who joined in DC while we were there. Thank you for everybody who contacted your representatives. I know it
Yes.
feels like it didn't matter or that it didn't turn into the result we wanted. but being involved in our government is what's important. I was talking with some other people that are on this live that are from South Carolina. We're making plans. Our representatives like refuse to even respond and listen to us. And so we're making plans for the next election cycle to actively support whoever is running against them. And so it's the local elections that are important, that build up to the bigger elections. Make sure you're participating in all the ranges, all parts of it, because each of those levels matter and affect you in your daily life.
Yep, absolutely. James, do you have any last words for us?
Well, it's just a really big time appreciation and honor to be here with each and every one of you guys. I know you guys bring different things to the table. I'm glad we're all here, very diverse crowd. So I love that. And I look forward to I know, Tiffany, I'm going to come out to DC in like a couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah.
And also, I think I'm going to see you two there, Tony, but every single one of you that are still here, I look forward to seeing more of your content and then collaborating or doing something to just really, really, thankful, grateful to be here with you guys.
Thank you, James. And Ian, final thoughts?
Yeah, I got to ping pong off what Tony was saying earlier about apathy. Apathy is seditious. It's subversive. It creeps into our culture. It creeps into our minds. And it is, if you give into that path, you create more of that path. And if you give into hope, you create more of that hope. And so we can all see our world changing around us, if for the better, if we want to see that, and for the worse, if we want to see that. And this is clearly an opportunity here to see a change for the better in our political system, in our social systems, in our culture. So I would love for people to leave this feeling a little bit of hope for our voices, for our politics, for change in the future. It might not happen immediately, might not happen right now, but it will happen because inevitably the playing field is being leveled, and it's because we're all working to level it. And so obviously we need to close on saying, Tiffany, you have done amazing work to level it. You did amazing work to put this together, and you are definitely the one that did the work behind the scenes, and you are the star of this show, and we appreciate you so much. So thank you, Tiffany. And if anyone in the audience is not following Tiffany Cianci, follow Tiffany Cianci. She does a million things in every direction to help make the world a better place for regular people, for businesses. So thank you, Tiffany. You're the best.
Yes, I don't think people have any sense of like how much she does and how many hours a day she operates. I've only recently got to know that, and I'm so impressed.
27 to 28 hours a day.
Yeah,
that's how much she's operating. Yeah.
I saw her with 2 phones earlier today. Yeah, we're
He posted a picture because I was on 2 calls at the same time. I was like, just a second. I was over here. Just a second.
Shit, I thought I was busy.
Wonder Woman.
All right, for my closing thoughts, I'm just going to say that for anyone who's down there thinking we can't change things, a lot of people are thinking the big things, like we can't get somebody elected to the president, or we can't get a senator elected, or there are 100 ways to overturn the apple cart of monopoly, class division in this country, and wealth inequality. I have watched just recently, I mean so recently, like in the last 48 hours, as these huge systems of small businesses that are losing everything to private equity got together in groups and started winning court cases against massive monsters they never thought they had a chance against. Truly, monsters that had billions to spend. It's only through finding your voice and your community that you guys can work together. All of us can work together to actually change anything. And they being literally like the billionaire controlled state, the uniparty, the 2 wings of the same bird, the same millionaires that everyone that's elected in Congress right now works for, the status quo of their desire to keep insider trading and to work for those billionaires to keep that money train rolling through the station. They want you to believe we can't change anything. They want you to believe that. Do you know how many generations of people were told to believe they couldn't change anything and changed everything? So every generation, every single one. And we've never had the ability to organize. We've never had the ability to communicate so effectively. We've never had the ability to access information so immediately. And if ever there were a time in history that we actually could work together and change everything, I assure you that moment is now. It might not be today and it might not be tomorrow, but I promise you it starts today. Today it started by getting a presidential candidate polling at 16% to step away from giant rallies and to just get on TikTok and take random questions from strangers. And that means we can demand that of anybody we want. Anybody. And if they're not willing to do that, what do they have to hide? That's the only question we should be asking right now. of hearts with that many voices. And you can lift up a lot of people with likes and with voices instead of money. We can change everything if we want to. And I wouldn't be fighting this hard if I didn't believe that. I wouldn't have fought as hard as I did to create this first town hall if I didn't believe that. And so I hope every single one of you leaves here truly believing that you are capable of wondrous things. From our very first TikTok town hall, we are so glad you guys were here. We are so grateful for the love and support and the turnout, and we can't wait to have you guys back next time. Everybody have an amazing night.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Toodaloo, kangaroos.
Bye, guys.
Peace out.
Homies.
And that's all I wanted to come on and say. That's it. What? Oh, this is an important question. Let me unblock that. Cloud, yours was blocked. Just a minute. I'm going to approve that comment.
I already did it.
Were you paid for the live? Absolutely not. I don't take money from politicians. I don't take money from anybody. As a matter of fact, I get approached with so many offers. It's actually hard to articulate how much money I pass up on a weekly basis. Just this week, I was approached by a university that offered me almost $7,000 for 2 ads. And I turned them down because they're owned almost entirely by a private equity fund. I 1000% do not get paid for that. I make no money, essentially. So I will tell you, I did make about $100 in gifts on the live tonight. I did make that. So you guys paid me, I guess. And I was really grateful for that. But no, I was not paid for the live. I don't take money for things like that. And you can always verify that. You can always go check the campaign's PACs and their disclosure documents. They have to say whoever they pay money to. But I appreciate the question. And given how many current creators online have recently been cozying up to politicians that are paying big, I 100% understand asking that question. It's a reasonable question to ask. What's the worst, Andy? Thank you, Christina. I hope we're starting something big, truly. It feels like the start of something big, and I'm really hoping that's what we're headed to. His environmental ideas? Nobody's fought for the environment the way that Bobby has. In the last 30 years, he has sued more companies that have done damage to our environment than literally any other law firm in the United States.
Exxon.
Yeah. He's sued the FDA for not regulating Roundup in our agricultural products, giving kids lymphoma. He's sued to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. He's the reason that the Hudson River is getting cleaned up right now, because he sued over the Hudson River. Oh yeah, the influencers getting paid is sad. What's sad is that we've reached a point as a society where everybody's for sale, you know? The problem I have is that TikTok makes us disclose paid advertisements, technically, but so many people don't. So many people don't. Andy, I super appreciate the guest request, but I'm going to jump off. I appreciate it, but I'm really tired and I still have to drive home. Yes, I was talking about Robert Kennedy. Yeah.
Monsanto.
Yeah, he sued Monsanto and got the largest, at that point, the largest settlement in history with $13 billion for children that got sick from Monsanto products. It's getting harder to sue all the bad companies because they're all adding arbitration agreements. That was a terrible idea. I think I just got buffalo sauce in my eye. I'm 92% sure I have buffalo wing sauce in my eye from my fingernail from eating buffalo wings. Oh my God. That stings. Do I think he's a good candidate? He's a good candidate for me. He's the right candidate for me. I don't agree with him on everything. So first of all, GPT-2, Jason was respecting that this was a First Amendment debate or town hall, and that we want more politicians to show up. We were very, very lucky that we got their campaign to agree to no requested questions, no prior approvals. As long as everything was First Amendment, they said it was fair game. And I'm going to be honest, none of the other campaigns are screening everything. Everything. But I agree with you. I don't like that answer either. I will say he is the only candidate right now standing up for the protesters. He is the only candidate standing up for the protesters. And I am grateful for that. His stand on Gaza is not what a lot of us would like. I do believe it's maybe evolving, though. I will say he's anti-war, though, and is very pro getting America out of war as soon as he can get to office. Hi there. Hi, Hydra. Do I think he stands a chance? I try really hard not to make my beliefs in political candidates. I don't want you to think that my beliefs have to be your beliefs. I feel very, very... He is the only candidate that has a day one plan to fundamentally address private equity, which you guys, if you follow me, know is the hill I die on. Private equity has destroyed more lives than any outside force in American history for Americans. And they've extracted more wealth from America per capita than any force in history. I believe he has to two, and he gave some questions to some reporters. So I understand you not liking executive order. Unfortunately, right now we have a Congress that's not doing anything, and the only way to drain the swamp right now as an executive is through executive order. I don't like executive orders. As a matter of fact, I think they're fundamentally flawed in that they can be shifted every 4 years. You end up playing ping pong with the government. Right now, we have an ineffective, completely captured Congress. They have been captured by big money. They are all owned by the same billionaires. And that's why if he wants to drain the swamp, actually drain the swamp. Not like say you're going to drain the swamp and then fill it with swamp creatures like we've seen done in the last 8 years. But if he wants to do that, he's going to have to do it through some executive orders. So right now, the fastest way to see part of the live would be to go over to my X account. I reposted a woman named Angela that screen captured 46 minutes. But there's 2 hours and 16 minutes total, so I've got to figure out the best way to upload that because it's a long time. I know that. All right. I am so tired, guys. I am not my usual perky self. I'm just coming down. I'm crashing. Andy Peanut, not redhead mode. That's dangerous. Okay, everybody. So Tony is exhausted. He only slept like 3 hours. I only slept 1 hour. Tony, say goodnight to everybody.
Hi. I'm always my perky self, even if I'm dog ass tired.
He's lying.
No, I'm not.
Say goodnight.